welcome to the show. It's been a couple of weeks, actually probably only about a week since I put one out, but I still am looking at scotches. It's winter, I often do. And there's been some chatter about the Jura distillery online, of the people that I follow, so I thought I'd take a quick peek at some of the Jura expressions that I have. I've got Origin, Superstition, and a little bit of Prophecy. I'll tell you my thoughts after the break. Wow. As I said, welcome, I'm John, your whiskey neighbor, and I wanted to talk about Jura with you because a number of people I follow, the Malted Man Cave, and a few others, were suddenly talking about Jura, and I know that the fellow there, his name's got on my head, sorry, had this Jura Origin and really didn't like it, and made me think of, well, what do I feel about this? And I had both of these bottles unopened, so they weren't aging or oxidizing, and I thought I better walk through it a bit and give people my thoughts of Jura, because you see it fairly often where I am in Edmonton or Alberta, Canada. It's not the least expensive whiskey, but it often goes on a $5 or $10 sale and makes it a little more attractive. So what is it? So I'm going to walk through three of what they call their four main expressions. You'll often see a lot of unique Jura expressions, a specific year bottling or certain things, but you'll always find four: Origin, which is their 10-year, Superstition, lightly peated, no age statement, and Prophecy, heavily peated, no age statement, and I think Durec's Own, which is a 16-year expression. Here I go through each one. So Origin, as I just said, is a 10-year-old Scotch. It's aged at the Jura distillery on the Isle of Jura. I think it's just across a very short span from Islay. But this is because it's Scotch, it's just barley. It's aged entirely for the 10 years in ex-bourbon first and second fill casks. And there's nothing else to it. No other cask finishings. Nothing else kind of unique about it. So I've often heard it said that this is sort of like the base of the distillery that then they might put in other casks or in other expressions. So I have poured it here a few minutes ago. Each of these have been poured probably about half an hour ago. So the Jura 10 for me actually has an okay nose. I will say the internet's a buzz, hit and miss with Jura. For me, I like the nose. You know, I find it heavily fruited. Apples, pears for sure. Not much else. I could be convinced of some floral, some honey. But, you know, a fairly simple nose, but I don't mind the nose. Makes me think, oh, this could be quite a nice, very simple Scotch, which I appreciate. Sometimes I want just, barley aged in oak. Talk to me about it. But this is unpeated, so they've finished the malting process by drying it some other way. All right, I'm going to give it a taste. And I think that's where we get a few more haters than lovers. Jura 10, when you first taste, especially if it's your first whiskey of the night, I think the first thing that explodes in your mouth is the alcohol, right? I should say these are bottled at 43. I know in Europe, I think they're bottled at 40, but it's 43, 43, and I believe, I'll get to that in a second. These are also colored, and they are chill filtered, both the Origin and the Superstition line. So getting back to Origin, so this is the 10-year bottling. When I first put that in my mouth, it explodes with alcohol. It just burns. It's fumey. It's not acrylic or acetone, really. Like, it's not an off taste. It's just that it really comes up. And if I let the finish extend, the finish in terms of the tastes on it are quite short. but in terms of what you're left with is actually quite lingering. And so getting back to the taste, after you let the alcohol go through or you have a second sip, especially a small sip like that, I actually start to come back to the nose. I can taste, especially if I channel it a little bit centrally along the tongue, I really do get a lot of pear sweetness or apple, or and now I can get some honey, and I actually like it. I know several people just stopped watching, but I actually like it. I think the base flavors are quite good, but they're really hidden behind that explosion of there's alcohol. And the other thing is, as that sweetness fades and the finish goes away, it comes back for me as bitter wood. Makes me think that perhaps the casks that they choose for the 10-year-old are well used, because the sweetness could be maybe towards vanilla, which is part of maybe older casks, and I really hard to escape the bitterness for me. I end up liking Jura, but I would not recommend it unless you try at a friend or at a barkeep. You know, order it at a bar, because then you can decide whether you like it or not, because so many people do not like this whiskey. For me, it's not too bad. Moving on to Superstition. Now, Superstition is a non-age statement, so it's going to have probably some older but lots younger, or they'd advertise, you know, something more. But it is roughly 26%, I think, peated barley that goes into this, and so there is peat in this. It's also chill filtered though, and colored to be darker, which is nice. So it looks a little darker. And I like this nose even more. So I didn't mind the nose in the 10, and I like this nose. I find right away I'm greeted with that nice smoke, a little bit of peat, but nothing overpowering. I'm not too close to the campfire. I'm not changing oil. It's gentle. And if I stay at it, I won't do it now because it's a lot of dead time on the podcast, but or the show, I can actually pick up exactly the same that I was getting in the 10. If I stay at it, the smoke fades a little bit, and a lot of that sweetness and fruits comes out, which I like. So that's nice. And I like this Scotch, but many people will find a very similar experience. They still haven't done a decent work. Perhaps it just needs more time with some better wood contact to get rid of some of that alcohol presence that is there. But if it's a little bit later in the night, and you know how alcohol doesn't affect you as much in terms of like your palate, or if you don't mind it, and I guess I drink just enough whiskey that I don't mind it so much, I can right away get at the flavors, and I can let the edges of my tongue come alive with more spice than the previous expression. The peat flavors are still there. The sweetness comes through as I chew it or I taste it, and so I like that too. Sadly, and I would really be recommending this one, except it suffers from the same finish that the 10-year-old does. So if you put it down, talk to your friend. If you're not eating a snack, you'll be struck with the bitter wood, the tannins. I don't know what it is, but really is left there and starts to almost grow. And so that's too bad. I still like it, but okay. So 10-year-old, just in ex-bourbon, non-age stamp, just ex-bourbon, both chill filtered, colored, 43%, a little bit of peat. Like it more than the 10-year-old. Now moving on to the Prophecy. So I only ever had this, well no, I've had more, but I have this sample bottle of Prophecy, and this is quite a different expression than these two. By that I mean it's 46%. They've increased the alcohol. It's non-chill filtered, and this is aged in ex-bourbon, but it's also aged in some sherry cask. I don't know for how long, and also a little bit of specifically French oak So when you come to this is Prophecy. Its nose is smokier, peatier. The sweetness, you don't have to search for it. It's also there. Here we've got some fruits beyond those crisp, almost underripe fruits. Now we've got a little bit more mature, maybe more dark fruits, whatever those are for you. So this is now a good nose, and I have no problem saying I like this nose. Peat comes up quite strong with this. The spice levels are also strong all over the mouth. I should say across the line, the mouth feels decent. It's slightly creamy, a little bit coating. But this now, I mean, this is not Lafroig level. But now, I mean, the warmth carries through in the finish. It's down into my throat, hugging my chest. I'm a bit short here, but I don't want a lot of dead time. I don't find the bitterness comes back to me here. It's still non-age stamp, so it can't be... Really, they've got to be using some young whiskey to pick it up, or I'm sure they'd tell you that it's 12 or more. But I think if you're trying Jura, and you like peated Scotch, then consider jumping in at Superstition, but look out for Prophecy. I think it's a decent Scotch. So if I were to give these a star values, they grow exactly as I've put them out here. Jura, look, it's a total hit and miss. So please don't buy a whole bottle like this. Go get a sample, go get a taste and see if you like it. I happen to like it, so I'm happy to give it 3 stars. The Superstition I like more because I do like peated whiskey and it gives it a little more dimension. Some people say it's confused, they're not married well. And I don't have a lot of argument for that. It does have quite a bitterness in the aftertaste. Both of them do. But I'd give that like a 3.5 stars. And now I'm saying, maybe consider it. And then the Prophecy, I like. It's not as smooth. It still has that alcohol bite or bark that I've certainly seen handled better, even at young or non-age stamp peated whiskeys than this one. This one's still, it's quite present, but I'm not put off by that. And so I'd happy to move Prophecy into the 3.5, 4-star range, depending on your mood. If you don't like peat or you want to try peat for the first time, don't try that. Go pick out my favorite quarter cask. I love that whiskey a lot. Lagavulin 16 is a classic. Those are so much, the quarter cask is barkier and stranger and whatnot, but the flavors are phenomenal. You'll find more in that whiskey. And Lagavulin 16, it's just, it's so well crafted. I find the layering and the marrying of the sweetness that you can get, the cereal notes from barley and yet the smoke and peat. So really, if you just want to go after peat, go after those two. But coming back to the Jura line, so I'd be comfortable with a 3, 3.5, and a 3.5 star, but I like it more. Having said that, all of them suffer a little bit from a bitter aftertaste, and all of them suffer a little bit from an alcohol bloom. And so I don't know if they need to look at their casking or something else. Obviously, they know whiskey far more than me, but those would be criticisms of the line. Thanks for joining me. Like, comment. Could get a lot of comments on this. I know a lot of people don't like Jura out there, but I actually enjoy pouring this. I enjoy Jura. So for me personally, I have no problem buying these bottles, especially when they go on sale. I like them. But I would be careful recommending them because a lot of people find that they don't like some of the things that maybe I've mentioned or didn't mention, maybe you would find. So like, subscribe, share, John the Whiskey Neighbor. Thanks for dropping in for this little exploration through the Jura Distillery. I should say they have Egyptian symbols. I like the shape of the bottle, but I have no clue what Egypt has to do with Scotch. Maybe someone could tell me that too. Anyways, take care. Thanks. Drink responsibly.